Hi Last Watchers, back in April I had the opportunity to review the A11 Vinceranza, a modern day upsized reinterpretation of a US World War II mil-spec field watch. Sadly the A11 was a review piece and I had to send it back to the States. You can watch that review in full and learn more about US military watches by clicking the link at the top of your screen. Praesidus, the brand behind the all-new A11, were so pleased with the review that they got back in touch and offered me the option of a free watch. All I had to do was select a dial colour and strap option. Of course, I said yes and asked that they send me the black dial on the leather strap, and here it is. Well, not quite. The dial is clearly not black. As a watch reviewer, I'm used to watches not being as they are promised. Being sent the wrong coloured dial is no biggie or cause for complaint, especially when the watch is free. But I have to play devil's advocate and see it from the perspective of a potential customer who would be pretty hacked off if they got sent the wrong dial. I suspected that Praesidus might have had a few gremlins in the works. I contacted the brand to highlight the error, for which they were most thankful. And you'll be glad to know that they fixed a technical glitch in their ordering process before the watch went live. If you buy the A11 Combat, you should get what you order. The packaging from Praesidus is very in keeping with the military theme of their watches. You can almost imagine being handed this kit along with your uniform and boots from army stores. As well as your watch, the long box also contains a dog-style warranty card and rudimentary instruction manual. The A11 Combat, or to give it its full name and reference, the A11 Combat P32 MIC DBRK1 is the smallest and therefore the most accurate interpretation so far of the original World War II A11. It has diminutive proportions with a case diameter of 32mm. Its pie pan shape make it a little smaller where it meets your wrist. It has a lug-to-lug of only 38mm and a total thickness that includes the subtlest of dome crystals of 10.3mm. The lug width is a rather slender 15.8mm, which will accommodate 16mm straps. The weight is a barely there 34.89 grams. It is by far the smallest watch I have had on the channel. The proportions of the A11 Combat come from a period long before today's trend for big watches. In fact, wristwatches were still relatively new, having been made popular a generation earlier by soldiers in the First World War. Their necessity in the Second World War came at a time when resources were scarce. A smaller watch used less metal, but also took up less room on the wrist, where it could slip quite easily out of harm's way under army fatigues, and be less likely to interfere with the operational dexterity of the wearer. Praesidus took their inspiration for the Combat P32 from a vintage A11 produced by Elgin. Sticking with the original dimensions may be a step too far for many, but they have given the watch some modern day upgrades. Gone is the old brass and silver plated case, which has now been replaced with an all 316L stainless steel. Low light legibility has also been improved with superluminova on the hands and dial, and the movement has been swapped out for a Swiss Ronda 763. Yes, it is a quartz, but before you get a bee in your bonnet, I should point out that this small 32mm watch comes with an equally small price tag of only $129. If you're looking for an automatic, then you should look elsewhere in the Praesidus range. I guess it's time to take a closer look at the A11 and try it for size. The case of the P32 has an entirely fine sandblasted finish. The lug faces, by way of contrast, have been polished. It's an unnecessary but welcome attention to detail that draws your eye to the sandblasted bezel that frames the dial. Those lugs have also been drilled, which will aid those of you that like to swap out your straps. The easy to grip coin edge crown of the A11 is reasonably sized at 6mm and doesn't look out of place. It has a polished undecorated outer edge. There's an ever so slightly double domed K1 mineral crystal which ties in quite respectfully with the vintage aesthetic. I'm guessing sapphire would have beefed up the price on such a lean watch. The dial of the A11 is not black. Honestly, I'm getting over it. It's also not white, nor is it an off-white. Praesidus advertised this as a matte ivory cream, and I would back that up as a fair description, and no doubt it may well look like an aged white dial A11 variant if they had made such a thing. To my knowledge, they didn't. The dial, like all original A11s, is unbranded and has a basic chapter ring, black printed indices for the minutes, with almost translucent green coloured superluminova dots at the 5-minute markers. There are Arabics around the exterior of its perimeter marking the 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 and 60-minute positions. Within the chapter ring are bold black printed field style Arabics for the hour markers 1 through to 12. The hands are painted black and cathedral in style, minus some detail from the hour hand, and filled with more green superluminova. There's also a black stick seconds hand with a dainty counterbalance. The 32mm A11 Combat may be a small watch, but it loses nothing when it comes to legibility and its time-telling ability. It's a dial that punches above its weight. I'll drop in a loom shot here. It's fair to say that the hands have the lion's share of the superluminova. The rear of the watch, much like the front, doesn't overindulge us with superfluous details. It has a screw-down case back, which may need a specialist tool or a rubber ball to remove when replacing the battery every 2 years. There's a raised circular brushed decagon within a polished circular ring, and finally a Praesidus brand name, the only one you will find on the watch, and its Type A11 designation. There's some text informing the wearer that the watch is assembled in the USA, albeit with imported parts, and its Swiss movement, which we know to be quartz. The only thing to add which is noticeably missing from the A11 specs is its 50-meter water resistance, which is okay for a field watch, and its 2-year warranty. I opted for the brown leather strap, a slender affair that starts at 16mm between the lugs before tapering to 13mm at the buckle. At 2.6mm thick, it's quite supple with a worn-in look that makes it comfortable on the wrist. It has matching brown stitching, twin leather keepers, and a fairly rudimentary, all-polished, undecorated tang and buckle. It does benefit from bolt action release spring bars, which are a doddle to remove. The A11 Combat P32 MIC DBRK1 is a little watch with a long reference and a lot of history. The original A11s were the ultimate tool watch of their day, worn by soldiers that didn't give a hoot about its size, only its ability in combat. Praesidus have built on that reputation with a reinterpretation that keeps the price down with the installation of a quartz movement and an affordable crystal. If you're into military memorabilia or have a very slender wrist, then spending $129 or around £110 on this authentically sized homage to a World War II icon will be a no-brainer. That is, however, a very niche market, and I suspect that the majority of potential customers, me included, will find the P32 way too small. Even with the current trend in the market for smaller watches, there's no getting away from the fact that the Praesidus looks quite lost on a fairly average 7-inch wrist. Call it personal taste and familiarity, but I'm not sure any amount of wrist time will improve that perception. Fortunately, Praesidus have multiple variants of the A11 that should fit most wrists. There's the Origin, which appears to be a 40mm version of the Combat, and as seen in my previous review, they have a 38 and 42mm Vince Speranza and Tom Rice. More recently, they've also introduced the Marston Matte, a limited edition 38mm with double dome sapphire glass, a worn dial and a Swiss-made STP movement. Good luck getting one, but that would be my pick of the bunch. I'll add a link to the Praesidus website in the video description below. So what about the P32? Well, as luck would have it, my wife loves it. It sits perfectly on her 6.5-inch wrist, and the fact that it's a quartz is ideal for someone who very seldom wears a watch. More importantly, she even loves the dial colour. Maybe the ordering department at Praesidus knew something that I didn't. Whether it's by accident or design, the 32mm A11 Combat might be that rarest of watches, a watch that appeals to both men and women. If Praesidus have a gender breakdown on who is buying their combat, I'd love to see it. Regardless of your sex, feel free to share your thoughts on the A11 combat and let me know if you'd be comfortable wearing a 32mm watch. Thanks for watching, be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you all in the next video.